Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Device podcast, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We are particularly interested in understanding how someone's personal experiences, challenges and pivotal events influence professional journeys. And as we progress through the conversation, we will eventually land on the question, what is the one defining moment or experience in your life that changed everything and set you on the path that you're onto today? Today's guest began their career in energy and environmental technology. They completed a PhD and helped build and scale an energy consultancy that was eventually acquired by Npower. From there, he made the shift into MedTech, and worked with early stage health tech companies as a founder, CEO, chair, and non-exec, helping them navigate through product development, regulatory, and commercialization. But as always on this podcast, it's not about the job titles and the accolades, it's about the person behind it. And what's going to be unique about this conversation is it won't just be about previous turning points, it'll be one that they're currently facing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Russell Payne. Welcome.
Thank you. I think that's great. I can leave now. I think you covered it. What a great intro.
The shortest podcast today. So before we get into some of the things that Nathan mentioned there, let's go back to where your story began. So just tell us a little bit about your early years and what shaped you growing up.
Growing up, as in before work or the first part of work?
Before work, childhood.
Before work, childhood, right, that far back. Well, we're going to need a longer podcast, I think. I grew up in sort of near Weston-super-Mare, small village. Didn't do particularly well at school and things, was very distracted all the time by friendships and what people thought of me. Which you grow out of as you get older, and it's something I'm helping my children grow out of a little bit. And, these things, some people never grow out of them, of course. But I sort of found myself when I did a degree. I did a year in industry, worked down in Pembroke, discovered Wales, loved it. And that sort of meant that I started doing better at academia. So I got a good degree in science, Bachelor of Science, and then moved on to a PhD, as Nathan said in his intro, which was based on energy and environmental technology, and my degree. But then I moved on to the PhD was more sort of heat transfer and artificial intelligence, which is a bit of a hot topic, excuse the pun now. A lot of companies are looking at AI, and they're sort of looking at perhaps not the true AI, but the AI that's quite important at the moment, that's shaping all the technology as we move forward.
Yeah, and most of our guests, being a MedTech specific recruitment business, either train or enter the medical device industry from their first job after graduation, and we talk about, were they your aspirations? But you've come into MedTech at a later stage in your career after some success in the energy sector. But what were your aspirations as a child or as a teenager?
Well, that's an interesting. I'll be quite honest. I think I didn't have many aspirations work-wise. I sort of entered the energy market because it was hot at the time. There was a lot of companies looking for people to join, and I hadn't done particularly well in school. So when I looked for my degree as a stepping stone to get into it, it was just sort of, there was low entry criteria to get onto the degree, and it sounded interesting. There was a little bit of interest in there. But yeah, I can't say that I had an amazing aspiration for it. My sort of aspiration came a bit later after we'd built and sold the energy business, which I know we're going to talk about, but it sort of gave me a drive to want to sort of help people. And that's how I moved into MedTech, because I'd sort of felt, the world's been very kind to me. I've been able to get from a small startup right the way through to selling it. Great experience. Only 1 in 10 companies tend to do that. Very lucky to be part of the team that did it. And I thought, let's try and see what I can do to give back. And MedTech are one of the fields that really try to help people.
Yeah, it's probably the reason why we've recruited into the industry for 13 years, because ultimately a lot of people would say recruitment is a sales role, but when you do it into an industry with such a people-focused impact, it makes our day job a lot easier. We've always said if we recruited into banking, I'd have quit a long time ago. It's not worth it. But it is a really incredible industry, some of the innovation. So in terms of role models or influences in your early life, I think when people reflect, it's perhaps sometimes a teacher or a parent, a friend's mum or dad or something like that that just gave you some early exposure or guidance onto the path that you were on? And that's not true for everyone, but does anyone spring to mind for you?
Yeah, there's a few people actually. I mean, um, my father is a great mechanical engineer. Nothing he couldn't fix at all. Parts on his cars that he fixed that normally you'd throw away and buy another one. It's incredible. Very, very talented man. And my friend John, his father, I learnt a lot of patience from, and he worked in the IT industry. So whereas I'd sort of grown up with, it's not working, press buttons faster and harder, he sort of taught me a lot of patience just observing him as he worked on such systems. But as I moved sort of more into academia and into work, I'd have to say, and I don't want him to ever hear this, Dr. Steve Lloyd was really good at helping me finish my PhD. And also I worked with him in the company Rum that we all built with 2 other people and sold it to Empower. And he's been sort of quite a good sort of mentor throughout that time. But if you ever asked me to repeat it in front of him, I couldn't. So I think
I'm going to send this episode directly to him.
I never really ended it. I think that's sort of really the top people, really. Yeah.
Nice.
And as you know, we like to talk about turning points, big moments, pivotal moments in people's lives, and how that sort of shapes the sort of path that they take. So I know we've got a couple of things to talk about. So if we go back to the first sort of major turning point in your career, which I think is around the time which you sold, if you wouldn't mind sort of sharing what was going on at that point, what was the moment, why did you take that moment, why did you do what you did? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we built the company for around about 10 years, and it was succeeding. It was making a good profit, and it was Jamie and Steve who actually sort of went to a seminar or two and said, yeah, it's the right time to sell this business. I'll come on to the personal stuff in a moment that affects me. They sort of started the process going. My part in it was to keep the business operating, which was my job, and also to get all the information together and attend the pitches and do all of that. And yeah, obviously have an input in helping them get that business over the line to sell it. So that turning point itself that gave me the experience that a lot of companies wanted, because like I said previously, it doesn't happen that easily, and it's very rare for it to happen in sort of the first company you work for, the first main company, from a startup through to acquisition. The sort of personal journey, at the time we were selling the business, we were having our our second child, who actually had a bit of delivery problems, and it was quite a stressful time. It was sort of 50-50 if she'd make it through, and we're very pleased to say she did. But that was sort of happening just as we just sold the business. So that bit sticks in my mind as a sort of a personal challenge that we had to get through as a family. But jumping back to the sort of the personal part of selling the business, I think spinning plates is sort of a talent that everybody picks up if you're good at working in several businesses, or you're going to work as a non-exec somewhere and you need to be able to spread yourself quite thin. So you need to be able to keep a lot of things going. Excuse me. And when you're sort of preparing information, attending these sort of pitches, thinking about how you're going to be selling the business, what's our unique selling points, how are we going to attract the right team, right sales pattern that we want, and get the right price for the business, things like that, plus keeping it all going. You're doing a lot of things. You've got to rely on a lot of individuals as well. But generally, when it comes to business, there's not a lot of emotion I sort of put into business. I see everything as a project, as a mini project that needs to be run, which is quite boring in a way. But when it's all I can sort of really say is how I run those things. But when we got to the point we were selling the business, it was obviously fantastic. We'd succeeded. There was a huge weight off everyone's shoulders. I remember the day we were signing all the papers. It was sort of half a day of constantly signing paperwork and signatures. And we've been through, I think, quite a lot of DD, due diligence, for the company that was buying us, because there wasn't just a small outfit that, excuse me, just wanted to do a light touch. It was quite a lot of DD. So we'd been through the ringer for quite a number of months. And to get to the end of it was amazing. And I remember coming back in after that to work again, and all the same people, same building, but you had a completely different feeling. And at that point, we were able to tell the staff, because we had to keep everything confidential. So that was quite difficult as well, trying to even had staff. I had a member of staff who was leaving at the time, and I was trying to, and it's been recorded, I was trying to sort of say, you might want to choose a better time to leave the business. You might want to stay with us, because obviously, we were moving into a larger business, hopefully with better salaries and contracts and things. So, but yeah, it's a lot to keep going, but great feeling after we'd finished it to be part of that team that was successful,
And obviously you mentioned the sale of a company, and I imagine, as you said, it's an amazing feeling getting to the point only 1 in 10 companies tend to do this. But then at the same time, your daughter being unwell. And were they literally happening at the same time?
No, sorry, I was a little bit after. We just sold the business, but it sticks in my mind because it was, one of the best and worst times of our lives, when you've got that sort of thing. You got a second child, and we were very excited, but things weren't too great. But my wife is big into the church and had a lot of faith, and was a lot stronger than I was, and a lot more positive. And thankfully, within a day or two, things had turned around. But it still meant that we had a couple of years of monitoring and checking that there was no brain damage and things like that. But yes, it was. It's sort of, you have that. It was a month or two after, but you have this elation of we're moving into this brand new phase, and you're part of a much larger thing. Everyone's very excited. There's lots of meetings to go to. How are we going to structure this new partnership? And at the same time, then I wanted to take time to then spend a lot of time with my wife and my existing child, and make sure that everything was okay. But that for the sort of few days in between, it was terrible, because you just don't know what's happening, and you don't want that to friend. Nobody wants that. You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, But I tell you one thing the company did do. The chap who'd actually acquired us in the other company sent a large bunch of flowers to our family to say, don't worry, it'll all work out. And he was right, it did. So, right, okay.
Yeah, so you mentioned that this was a sort of pivotal moment in your life, and that it changed the path at which your career took. So if you wouldn't mind sort of going into that around how did this time period influence that?
Okay. Yeah, so as what normally happens, even though there's every intention from both parties when a larger company buys a smaller company for it to succeed, most of the time, again, sadly, it doesn't. And in this case, it wasn't working for myself personally. I won't comment on any other members of the team. So I only stayed about 9 months into the larger company, and I decided after that I had a lot that I could offer startup companies that were looking to grow that business and then move into acquisition, and understanding what is how to do that, to look at the end game and work backwards, and what you need to have in place to do all of that. And it takes a long time to do that. It can be quicker. Obviously, we took a long time, took 10 years. You can do it a lot quicker, but that's something that was of value. So I thought, well, it's time for me to go and try and use this information that I've gleaned, rather than stay in a company where I've become unhappy, in a much larger organization, where for me, I could make a decision in 6 seconds, and that's stretching it out. And a larger company would take 6 months, and you can't work that way once you've worked in an agile environment, to go into these big machines that just don't change. So I made my decision. I want to go and work elsewhere. I've got a lot to offer. And thankfully then, because of that experience, there was a lot of companies that sort of wanted me to help with them. I'll explain how I got into MedTech specifically in a moment. But that was the pivotal moment. I've got something to offer. And I decided then, well, I could keep working. I could stay in energy. I did actually set up an energy consultancy with some friends in parallel, because I didn't want to let go of it completely. But that was really because I had so much information in my head still about the energy management side of things. But what I really wanted to do was to help people. You want to be remembered for something, and you want to sort of try and think, well, what can I do here that will make a difference? So I started picking companies that make a difference. And the first one I came across, called Thermetrics, working in the area of diabetes. I met Doug Hampson, was the spin-out manager from the University of Glamorgan, then known. And he'd sort of, Steve Lloyd and I were talking to him about potentially collaborating a business that we'd set up in diabetes as well. So again, looking at diabetes being one of the worst things that we can hopefully make a difference about in a couple of different ways. So Doug asked me, could I help them develop this product that they were going to make? And so even though I hadn't had any experience in the medical sector, product development's product development. The difference being when you've worked in the MedTech, you'll understand how the regulatory side and the clinical data collection side is so important. But on the documentation on how you develop a product is very different. So I went into it a little bit blind, saying, of course, I develop products all the time, products and services. I developed all the ones for rum. It's not a problem. I can do all this for you. So I started doing it and then realized, wow, this is actually about 10 times harder, Thankfully, there was other people to help take up some of the regulatory side of things, and we could outsource some bits. But we developed that product, and that product's been selling. We're looking at taking an investment into that business to help it succeed. And from that, I sort of started looking at what else can I do alongside that. So as you sort of said, without me going into a lot of detail, I'm working in a non-exec capacity for quite a few companies, chairing one as well, a company called YourQ that's got a sort of non-invasive vitals monitor. It's quite exciting. Just completing the investment round now. I've actually moved into investment a bit too. I've invested a little bit myself, but most of the time it's helping companies find that money to help them. As part of the pathway as you're growing is to have that springboard of cash to help you get there. So working with a couple of companies in that vein as well. And when we move on to it, I can tell you about the company I'm working for right now.
So this turning point where you've changed industry completely,
Yep.
there was obviously a want to do it, but are there any specific lessons that you reflect upon from that time of your life?
Lessons. I would say there's one. I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, this is an exciting area over here to go and work in. So let me go over here and try it. And it's kind of a nice attitude, but really you want to stick with where you've got experience, because that's what people look for. I mean, I've hired and fired a lot of people, sad to say, over the years. Thankfully, as I've matured a bit more as a manager, director, founder, you tend to be better at selecting and don't have to fire as many, which is good. But yeah, I think knowing that you've got the right experience and choosing the right people is important. So yeah, I'd say I perhaps jumped into it a bit blind, as I said, thinking, I can just move into this new field here. But thankfully, the product development is still the same core element. When you've got that mentality of, I've got a project to follow, I've got these steps, and I've got these contractors and this internal team to manage, that part doesn't change. When it comes to MedTech, it's the regulatory side, the documentation side. Everything's got to be minuted, everything's got to be recorded, everything's got to be version controlled. It's all got to form part of a quality system, and then you've got to be audited yourselves. It's sort of blending the hardest quality side of things with the most important, for obvious reasons, because it can be life and death, product development that you'll ever do. So it's very exciting. But yeah, I think the learn for me was perhaps I should have had my eyes open a bit more to say, should you be just jumping into this with both feet? But it worked.
Yeah. So the next sort of key turning point, which I introed at the beginning, is something that you're currently going through. So what are you able to sort of share there? Well,
as I sort of said, I moved into MedTech to help people, to join companies and to work with companies and make a difference. And I started working with Pulse Angels, a new investment arm, which was already in discussions with a company called Valley Diagnostics. Again, another Welsh company. I love my Welsh companies and try and work with them wherever I can. And they are looking at cancer treatment and looking at creating a urine-based lateral flow test initially to detect prostate cancer with a really high accuracy, because obviously there's a lot of the press at the moment about the UK and prostate cancer has taken over the #1 type of cancer, and actually the present PSA test is terrible. It's 50% accurate, and it doesn't even tell you if you've got cancer, it just tells you there's a problem. So it can't even be used properly in screening, and the UK is moving away from that. So this company I started talking to really liked it, sold and pitched at Angel Invest Wales, part of Development Bank of Wales, and thought this is good. Started talking to them, helped them sort of find some funding, which is what we're going through still at the moment. But also thought I really liked that, so I got talking to the CEO in the chair, and sort of said, well, do you want me to come and work with you as well? And they were quite excited about it because of my background and the commercialization that I can bring, as well as the operational side of things. So I sort of started working with them, and at that point then got my own diagnosis of lung cancer, stage 4. So that was quite, without realizing it, I joined a company that I wanted to try and help people in the future, and it would have been great if the products had already been on the market, because it took 7 months for me to get my diagnosis, whereas with one of these lateral flow tests, we can get a diagnosis within 15 minutes. And that's coming out later. So right now we're focusing on the prostate cancer. We're also looking at breast cancer and lung cancer tests. So we're looking to completely change the landscape where we can. There's stepping stones in between how we can release the products. But imagine having a test that can give you a really accurate diagnosis to say you've got cancer or you haven't, and what stage are you at, within minutes, and you can do it at home. You know, it's a complete game changer, and it is science. It is completely backed up, and we proved the technology with bovine TB lateral flow test that we've created, obviously for animals. That was the original product that has already proved itself, and we're moving that forward. So it's quite exciting. But personally, and the whole podcast is about your sort of personal experience, as you can imagine, you know, getting a diagnosis that is not great news is quite difficult. And I think it can be very difficult to look at how do you keep moving forward each day. I want to still make that difference. So let's see what I can get to. If we can get the prostate cancer test out, fantastic. My aim would be to get the lung cancer test out, obviously, so that other people don't have to go through what I've been through.
And how long have you known?
Right at the end of August last year, I was diagnosed. So, yeah, and not delivered in the best way, the information. I don't think the doctor realised they hadn't really told me. Only just the name of something, not really a diagnosis. But yeah, I end up doing a lot of my own research into it to make sure that I can sort of get the right supplements and perhaps other things that might help. Because sadly, it's without going into a lot of detail, some people get mutations that can be acted upon by immunotherapy, others don't. I was very unlucky to get it at my age as a non-smoker, and very unlucky also to find that there's no mutations that could be targeted. So not the best, but you play the hand you're dealt, and you know, we every day keep researching and keep looking into what can we do about it, alongside all the other stuff.
And yeah, and how are you feeling at the moment?
Good. I'm still going through chemo. I don't think I said at the start, only perhaps to you guys personally, I've aged 10 years in 1 year. It really does seem that way. I always look young for my age, and so finally I've caught up with the other boys who look about the same as me, at the age of 51. There'll be people watching this going, 51? I thought he was 61. So yeah, but I've sort of I've had 5 lots of chemo, and I've got a lot of side effects from the immunotherapy in particular that we're trying to work our way through. But I want to get to the end of the chemo, and then we'll see what's the next stage after that, really. Is it that I do my own thing, or do I stick with the NHS and keep using their sort of immunotherapy that's making life very difficult, actually? But you still fight it, still get past it, and still, you know, do the work that helps people.
And having this focus of work, and almost the separation of what you've got going on personally, you've got your family, you've got your work and other interests. How good are you at day-to-day compartmentalizing this diagnosis?
Well, I think personally, I'd like to say I'm very good at it because I'm treating it like a project. There's a research part to it. But sadly, what happens is I might get a phone call from the local cancer centre. We need you to come in for tests this afternoon. I can't, I've got meetings. So I have to very quickly contact people and say, I've got to shift it. Or I can sometimes say, I can't, I need to move it another day. And so they have to sort of wait for me, but you can't really keep the cancer centre waiting, especially if they want more blood tests and things like that. So, I mean, this week, I think I've been 2 or 3 times into a hospital for different tests. Sometimes you turn up, they don't know why you're there because it's not been communicated, unfortunately. It's not the slickest system. Great people in the NHS, but the system is very lacking, I'm afraid. It needs a lot of improvement, as we all know. But yeah, I've got to go back in Friday, and I got 2 appointments tomorrow. So all of a sudden, that eats into your day, your week quite a lot. And I've got people who need me to be in meetings and things, and we got things set up. So personally and mentally, I'm able to treat it as a project, and that's perhaps how I cope with it. And that's how I cope with anything. It's just another thing that needs to be actioned at the right time. It's prioritised and actioned. You've got to give it a top priority because it's so important. There's no point doing everything else, if you can't get that one right. But yeah, it's something which, to me, sitting in front of this computer and working is a nice distraction.
Yeah, I can imagine. And thinking about it like a project, you would then associate other words with how you would manage it in terms of the need for patience, the need for good communication. I guess what you want on things is clarity and then direction, because you can start to make decisions with the information that you've got. And perhaps sometimes the pathways that you're in with the NHS at the moment, that will test your patience, and you have to be adaptable to the journey that you're on. But some of the experiences that you've got through your career are probably being put to good use in a different way at the moment. But one thing that you would have had throughout your career and the ups and downs, but also in your personal life, is that support system and people that you can lean on. So what does your support system look like at the moment?
It's my wife is amazing. She has taken up more of the slack because I found I was quite hard to, when the side effects were very bad, I couldn't get out of bed. So I sometimes would work from my bed with a laptop, as sad as that sounds, But I'd have a shower and then sometimes have to go back to sleep. I'm grateful to say that's not the case anymore, but my wife sort of reduced the work she was doing. She was going into her work a bit earlier, and I take the children to school, so she does that now, and she sort of almost looks after them. If she needs me to cook or do anything like that, she'll just tell me and I'll go and do it. But it's almost like I can spend more when I'm with the children now. I'm doing more quality things with them, so I can spend time with them. As soon as I finish my work, that's it. We'll do our normal sort of things that we would do after tea and things like that, and on the weekend we'll do things. But I don't have to sort of spend that time sort of taking them to school and things like that, which I did used to do, and it was good in a way, but it allows me to have my little bit of time in the morning where I can process everything that's going on. So she's been an absolute amazing. I can't speak highly enough of her, actually. And beyond her, there's my family and her family, and everyone's supportive. And in these things, people do sort of say, if you need anything, let us know. Well, we're quite a private sort of family, so we haven't really changed anything apart from, we have told people, but we don't really ask for help anywhere else. So we sort of look after it inside. I mean, we do get help from Rachel's mother, who's incredible, but she's always been that way in looking after the kids if we want a babysitter and things like that, But obviously there's a bit more cover with treatment, and my wife loves to come to the treatment and things like that. I think she likes seeing people stick needles in me. It's a bit of a sadist kind of attitude. I'm not sure it's support.
So there sounds like there's been some changes just in the home routine that has carved out some time for you, as you said, to process things. But is there anything specific or practical that you're doing now just to manage your mental health and your physical health? Is there anything new you're doing as part of this research phase of the project that you find is helping you?
I can't say there is really. Physical wise, I'm not sort of able to do the exercise I used to do. I'm literally half the man I used to be. I've got something called Puxty, which is where after I think it's the immuno rather than the chemotherapy. It eats through your body fat, it eats through your muscle tissue. So I lost 10 kilograms in less than 3 months. I just became very skinny. So that, coupled with not having much energy, believe it or not, despite how much I talk, it's difficult to do exercise. But I'm now trying different steroids with the oncologist to try and keep those energy levels up and try and get rid of some of the side effects. Because when you struggle to breathe, because I've also got pneumonitis that's come from the immunotherapy, which means I can't breathe very well. The treatment is actually worse than the disease by a long way. So I'm coughing, and so I'm on steroids for all these things, and hopefully I can get back to a bit more normality, where I can actually do more things. So I was able to, I can go out for walks. I supported a friend who's doing a walk for British Heart Foundation. It's incredible. She's doing, I think it's like 100 miles walk in 1 month. Sadly, she lost her partner to a heart problem a couple of years back, and she's dedicated to trying to make that improvement to help people. She's brilliant, Joe. So I went for a bit of a walk with her. Hopefully we're going to go for another one. So I'm trying to build up to doing some more physical things. But yeah, I mean, mentally, when we were first diagnosed, it was huge, obviously, and everything sort of pauses for a few days where you try and process the most difficult information you're ever going to get in your life, you know. So when we did that and we got through it, and then we put a plan in place, and really it's sticking to the plan. Once you've got that plan and you're in that process, there's a bit of comfort knowing that, well, today there's nothing more I can do to help that. So yeah, mentally I think it's that compartmentalization, and me putting it in as a project is something which is perhaps what helps, if you see what I mean. That's the way I deal with it. There might be better ways, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to someone facing their own turning point or life challenge? And it may be something physical, mental, there might be a work challenge, just generally around facing challenges in your life. What advice would you give based on how you've dealt with things?
Yeah, it has got very serious, this conversation, hasn't it? That's not who I am. I think it's, with every sort of big decision, there's a tendency for people most of the time to rush into things and to sort of look at, right, well, I've got to make a decision right now. And sometimes that's true. You can make a snap decision, and there's no need for any time to thought. If it's quite a large one, and certainly something that I've been through like it is, this is a long thing that you need to keep. You'll make a plan and you'll keep changing it. So I'd say the first bit of advice is to think everything through. And that might be a quick decision, it might be a longer one, but you need to think everything through and make notes. I make copious notes. You wouldn't believe the notes I make on the systems that I've got here. And they help you organise your thoughts as you're making them, even if you don't even look at them again. But it helps you organise your thoughts and put that strategy in place. But then don't be afraid that it's probably going to have to change, because certain things in life are set, other things are out of your control, and you've got to roll with the punches. So as they change, your plan has to change. So you've got to keep reviewing and keep updating and keep reprioritising. So it's a bit of a fluid thing. So I think that's probably the best advice I could give anyone who's going through a large sort of change. But also, I mean, I'm perhaps a slightly different, certainly looking at the images, different age group than you guys. Most of the time, you know, us blokes don't like to ask for advice and things. Well, look at ChatGPT. Everybody uses it, and loads of other AI tools now to save legwork of going to things. But you're still asking for advice. So, yeah, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law have just had a new baby. As an example there, I mean, that's not a work sort of related thing. Huge change. Your first baby changes everything for you. As if you've had a child, you'll know. And the one bit of advice I've given my brother-in-law is, don't be afraid to ask for advice. Because you think, oh, I've got to be able to cope with this myself. No, you don't. You know, you can always ask, and someone who's been through it before can help. You know.
I'm well. Becca and I are expecting our first at the end of May. So probably when I start recording some podcasts post summer, I will have also aged 10 years through lack of sleep. Yeah, but we'll have to have like a spin-off fatherhood podcast or something where I'm just getting advice from people every week.
Absolutely. The first thing Steve Lloyd said to me when I told him we were having our first, he said, say goodbye to sleep. Because for a few months, you don't get a lot. And then I found myself buying things, not that we had the money for it. I was buying sets of golf clubs and things. I already had a set. I have no idea why. I don't even play golf that much. You find yourself doing silly things because you're so sleep deprived, you know. It's crazy.
Dopamine hits.
Well, yeah, I was told that the first sort of 3 months will be tough sleep-wise. Then I was told most babies is around 6 months they start sleeping. Then I was told it was a year. Then I was told it was 2 years, and it got to 2.5 years, and then you just decided, right, I'm going to start sleeping now. So, yeah, expect the unexpected on the sleep.
You had that tough, mate. That's a lot worse than normal, mate.
Yeah. But so the kind of next point we normally get to is talking about the future and your plans and stuff. But I appreciate that's, you probably can't plan too far ahead at the moment because it sounds like you're in the hospital quite a lot. You're trying to make sense of what's next. But what's front and center for you right now? What things, I know you mentioned about getting the tests out with the business that you're working with, but personally, like what's on the agenda for you?
Well, it's to maintain everything that I'm doing now because I enjoy it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it, and so that's work-wise. I'm also, like most people would do, sort of trying to pick up on all the jobs around the house that need doing. Fixing leaky roofs and things, trying to make sure the nest is set, should the worst happen. And of course, at the same time, I'm looking at, I've got to do something here to help my survival, because otherwise it won't happen. So that's why the project is constantly to keep looking at what's this next bit of research, what trials are coming up, what other meds will help that are perhaps not on the NHS and not accepted, protocols and things like that. And I've got other support there. I think my friend probably wouldn't want me to name him and stuff, so I won't. But yeah, it's to keep that sort of project going, and yeah, hopefully then we get a really good positive outcome, if you see what I mean. So I'm looking at that's the number one project alongside all the others. So I've got to keep working on that every day. If I could, some people would just sit back and do nothing, but that's not who I am. So it's you do everything you can. And that's sort of my main drive, if you see what I mean, as well as doing the work that I do to help companies and people. It's you've got to help yourself as well, and that's the I've got to make sure I've got the right plan and keep adjusting it as needed.
Yeah, well, you're definitely taking action and doing everything that you possibly can. So nothing's being left to chance here.
That's right. Yeah.
And just thinking about the industry generally, I appreciate you came into it, sort of midway through your career. What excites you most about MedTech, diagnostics, digital health? Is there anything in there that stands out?
I think it's the innovation, because there's innovation everywhere, and people try to create nice, lovely new things, but there's a real need for it in MedTech. If you look at what Valley Diagnostics are trying to achieve here, it's absolutely fundamentally groundbreaking. It's not just a new widget that you could buy that could do something a bit quicker or better. It can really help save a lot of lives. The same as the metrics with the diabetic foot monitoring. If you can catch a foot ulcer early, it saves lives. So the work is so important. And I think that's what really excites me with MedTech. If you choose the right companies, even Avon Technology, I've worked with them a little bit. They're creating a non-invasive glucose monitor. And when that comes out, that will be as the first non-invasive one. A lot more people will take it up because it's not just finger pricking. It's not like you've got a needle in you and you've got to keep scanning it. It's far better. So it sounds like I'm selling all these products. I'm not. But all these things will make people's lives a lot better. But more importantly, they've all got the potential to save lives. So that's the exciting bit for me, is that you're developing things and you're getting them to market, and these things will help make a difference. I've always had this sort of thing in my head that I think if I jump right back to the start, perhaps every kid wants to be an astronaut or a fireman. For me, it was kind of like a fireman. If you save one person's life, then it makes yours worthwhile, So for me, and I know we've sold products that have helped catch foot ulcers and things. So immediately you think, well, that's great. We've built something and it's helped save somebody. So the more that happens, the more you're helping save people's lives. So that's the exciting bit for me. If you can get involved in something which makes a difference in a way that is going to help mankind. It's a bit different to making something which doesn't really help, or it helps entertainment or it helps other things. This is life-changing, and that's the real excitement of MedTech. And that's, I think, out of all the companies over the last few years I've worked for, there's only one which perhaps isn't in the MedTech space, and I just like the people. I'm still working with them now, but yeah, it's that drive to find something which you think will make a difference positively.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the perfect way to wrap up the podcast or the conversation for today. So a big thank you for coming on, but not just coming on and speaking, being honest about what's going on for you now. We both truly hope the recovery treatment, whatever that may be, is successful. And yeah, just a big thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Really, really interesting conversation. Just one question that actually came to mind, just as you mentioned the fireman analogy, because that's if you were thinking about that at an early age, and then after some success in your career, you pivoted towards MedTech to help people, and now with the diagnosis, your current situation, how important is legacy to you?
I think more so now. You want to be remembered for something, but I think it's always been, what will people think of you kind of thing after you've gone. And let's face it, most of the time people don't get thought of much, only by a few close family members. But that's not sort of the drive. It was more what makes your life meaningful. And that was kind of the idea of, because firemen are great, they go in, they save people's lives every day. So that's kind of, it makes you think, they've done something, they've done a good day's work there, haven't they? That was kind of my thinking. But yeah, I think legacy, it is springing up into mind a bit more. What do my children think of me? What do my brother-in-laws think of me? Things like that, and my family. How will I be remembered? Things like that. And that does come to mind a bit. But really, it is what it is, and what's happened has happened. But yeah, it does. I do sort of find myself perhaps trying to give some extra lessons to my children that are perhaps a bit high level, sort of a bit more sort of rather than just, we shouldn't do that, we should do this. Sort of, have we thought about this a little bit more, and how do you think this would work? Try and give them the tools to help themselves a bit more, perhaps. But yeah, not quite the answer perhaps to the question, but yeah. The short answer is, I'm sort of thinking a bit more about that, but maybe what I've done is enough. I don't know.
Yeah. I think when people think about legacy, you can think about legacy after an event or a diagnosis, for example. But I think if people just think about it generally, it can inform daily decisions around showing up as the person that you want to be and want others to see you as. And I think people should probably sit with that a bit more if they haven't thought about it. And yeah, as Nathan said, just very grateful for you sharing your journey and your story. Loads of lessons for us, and I'm sure our listeners. And I'd take this moment to ask our listeners to reflect on their own turning points. And if you feel like you've got a story to share, please reach out to myself or Nathan. Like and subscribe across the channels, and we'll be back very soon with another episode. So, Russ, thanks again.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.